Are we
Go ahead.
recording?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome to the first session of 2021 for Tangerine SDR and Hamsci Personal Space Weather Station. My name is Dave, KV0S. And this week I had my magnetometer working nicely outside, and we had an ice storm, and my hole filled up with water. Found a leak,
Oh
and I
no.
and I fried one of Scotty's boards, but actually the P&I board was fine, except the one that Scotty sent me doesn't work. So I need
It
to get
never
that
did.
back to. Never did
You
ever
didn't
since
order the optional extra smoke.
no,
Yeah.
but I did get this one with a little bit of water, and I tried cleaning it with some deionizer and stuff. It didn't really work, but Dave helped me out with this replacement board, so I'm back up and running, collecting data.
Yeah, water really shouldn't hurt it because that's how all the things are washed when they're put through the weigh machine.
Well, it was the voltage on the
When
pins.
it's on, it'll hurt it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
if they're
there's
truly off, it's
an-
different.
A number of the pins around the power supply turned green.
Oh, okay, that'll do it.
So, Dave, you want to send it back to me along with the P&I board, and I'll send
Okay.
you,
Okay,
warranty
sure thing.
repair.
or send Dave a new one.
Yes, I'm using Dave's number 5, I believe. So
Yeah.
I
Scotty,
like that it turned green, just like the jewelry I gave my first wife.
Scotty will put it on the environmental qual failure wall.
Yes.
yes, I will send that back. So that was I am back up and running, collecting data. And so that's my experience for the week. Next on the list, we have Nathaniel, W2NAF. Go ahead, Nathaniel.
Thanks, Dave. I spent a lot of this week reorganizing the cables in my ham shack. So I did a lot of cable management. And as a result, I now have running Kiwi SDR, a Yetis radio with the brand new 14-core computer and 128 gigabytes of RAM. I have the Grape running, and I also have an RBN receiver running on 8 bands. So all that's running simultaneously. I think it's going quite nicely. And then tomorrow, we're going to be meeting with the Hamsci workshop planning committee, which includes Christina Collins, Bill Lyles, Dev, Lori McCoy, myself, and Phil Erickson won't be able to make it. But one of the important things we're going to be talking about is what the theme is of the meeting and who we're going to invite for tutorial speakers. So right now what we're thinking of is doing a theme of mid-latitude science, mid-latitude ionospheric science. And the reason we're thinking of doing that is because the Personal Space Weather Station, all the continental United States and Europe, which is where most of the people who are going to be participating in this live in the mid-latitude ionospheric region. So we want to know what kind of science we can do with that. So for the tutorial speaker, I'm thinking of inviting right now, actually, my PhD advisor, Mike Rahanami from Virginia Tech. He is a super darn guy, and they've been doing mid-latitude radars for about the past a little over 10 years. They've put in these new radar systems. But I'd also be happy to hear some suggestions for, we usually have a representative from the amateur radio community too, to give a tutorial from the amateur radio perspective. So if anyone has suggestions on amateur radio tutorial speakers, I would be happy to hear them. So back to Net.
Very good. And next on the list is Dave, KD0EAG. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, yes. Hello, everyone. I'm not sure what I've been doing altogether. I know I've worked on code off and on pretty much the last week, I think, one way or another, but different things. Just trying to get usable code for all concerned out in people's hands. That's pretty much it.
Well, fine business. And next we have Greg, VA3 CBN. Go ahead, Greg.
As usual, I'm just going to soak up all your knowledge because you guys are so smart.
Right.
I just finished my last day of vacation. I'm back to work tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So I'll
Very
stay
good.
by and listen to all your knowledge.
Okay. And next on the list, we have Scotty. He's back from the land of the green.
Land of the grain,
The sick.
the land of the COVID-19 is what I'm back
Yes.
from. So not much going on, just getting back up to speed. Not anything to report this week, but pretty much over the bad part and just kind of resting now. So the fatigue is still with me a little bit, but getting better day by day. So that's where we're at today. Back over to you, Dave.
Is Nona well now too?
Yeah, she is. She's because she gave it to me, so you know it's better
Oh, okay.
to receive. So I've been a couple days behind her in symptoms, and
Okay.
we're pretty well over it here, just except the tiredness persists a little bit, and but other than that, everything's pretty much good.
Okay. Well, good.
Back, you're
Vaccines
better.
are coming.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Welcome back, Scotty.
Yes.
Thanks, Tom.
Welcome back.
Glad you're healthy.
Yeah, the biggest part of it was not knowing whether you're going to be one of the ones that dies or whether you're going to get better. You know. So you're laying there going like, well, which is it going to be? Okay.
Did you didn't have much pneumonia?
No, I had a cough, which is still a little bit with me, and mostly fever, low-grade fever, about 100 degrees for about 5 days, and aches and pains and tiredness. Mostly the tiredness was from not eating.
Yeah.
And I could eat. It's just that I did lose taste, and when you lose taste, you just can't eat anything. It's just nothing sounds good. Even your favorite stuff, cherry pie, ice cream, nothing tastes the same. So consequently, you don't eat. So the biggest thing you had to do was keep yourself hydrated, keep drinking.
Yes.
And I had no problem keeping anything down. It was just that you don't think about it. You're laying there and, feverish, and you just want to lay there and sleep, and you never drink or eat anything. And so the good news is I lost 10 pounds. So that's
Okay.
It's a hard way to do it.
Yeah, I
It's a
think
hard
there'd
way
be
to
an
do it.
easier way to lose
And
10 pounds.
I wouldn't want to lose the rest of the weight that I have to lose that way, but it's a beginning start anyway.
So
Gotta start on your New Year's resolutions.
Right. Don't eat anything for a month. That's my New Year's.
So next on the list is Dan in for XWE.
Thank you, Dave, and hello, everyone. Well, for the first time in about 6 months, my microphone on my camera started working. I have no hour why, but anyway, just did mostly the holiday thing this weekend. Watched a good football game, and that was about it. Back to you, Dave.
Well, fine business. And let's see. Next on the list is Bill, KB4EJ. Go ahead, Bill.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Good evening to you and Scotty. I am so glad to see that you're back. I was really worried because we've had friends who didn't make it. So
Yeah, I talked to my contractor. He lost 4 people who died in December from this.
Oh my.
So, like I said, you're laying in bed going like, is it going to be me next, or am I going to get better?
I think we've lost 8 people in our church so far. So it's
Mm.
anyway, very, very stressful, but I'm so glad to see that you're okay. Anyway, haven't been that busy. I got the grape up and running that John sent me, and collected a bunch of data that really wasn't valid because I've been struggling to get the right antenna. I've finally, what I ended up with is I put up I ordered an MFJ magnetic loop, which which I think will work well, but they're on back order, so I don't know when I'll get it. So independently of that, I'm trying to finish up a 5-band DXCC, and I need a lot of 80-meter stuff, so I put them an 80-meter inverted V, and it's developed some problems. I think maybe I got a cold solder joint, but it works great as a receiving antenna for the grape. So I have I still have the 80-meter dipole, which I can use for the mostly FT8 DXing, even though it's only about 15 feet, and the inverted V is at 50 feet. So anyway, so we're fooling around with that, but I think we're getting what looks like pretty much good data now. So John, thanks for the info on that. I've compared the latest stuff that I've got. I'm not getting the bad files anymore now that I have an antenna regularly on that. The data is sometimes polluted because I watch FL Digi on the system, and I can see that when I transmit, that there's weird stuff showing up in FL Digi, but it seems like it recovers though. So that's good news. Been working with GNU Radio. As you recall, I've gotten the Tangerine localhost emulator to where I can spit out UDP data and then display it using the GNU Radio and a UDP data source. The one thing that's strange is, so far, I've gotten it to work on other systems. I have not been able to get it to work if the GNU Radio instance it's running is running on the same Pi as the local host is running. Now, it could be related to how UDP works when you try and send from using the same port on a device. I don't, maybe the system doesn't support the concept of using a UDP port to pass data between two processes running on the same system. Maybe that's not supported. I don't know. I have to investigate that a little bit further. Or it could be also that maybe the Raspberry Pi doesn't have enough compute horsepower to be able to take the data generated and then pass it through the port and then display it through everything you got to do an FFT and a waterfall. So I'm investigating that. Also, I decided I need to get GNU Radio and rebuild it, because if you've ever looked at the waterfall in the FFT waterfall in GNU Radio, it's a little bitty. It's only about this big. You know, you can't have this great big long history. But I tracked down in the code, that's hard coded. The height of that thing is hard coded. And I'm going to see if I can change that variable in the code. It's set for 200 pixels, I think. And I think I needed about 600. So we're going to see if we can build it and get a larger spectrum scope that looks a little bit more like what you get in Spectrum Lab. So that's what I've been doing. Okay, back to Ned.
Fine business. Next on the list is Dave, N1HAC. Go ahead, Dave.
Hello, everyone. I'm doing some playing with magnetometers. I have the Tangerine magnetometer in the box outdoors, watertight, I hope, but I guess I'll go out and check it.
Well, it will stop sending data when you get water.
Right.
That's
but
it
we've
from
been
experience.
We've been getting the kitchen sink for weather here. But I've had out there. And then I've been working with scientific grade 1, but it's not giving good data right now. I may have 1 out of 3 good channels. It was, after all, shut down for almost 20 years. Last data it gave was 2002, I think. But there's something there. But I have a third one that I need to box up in a waterproof case. It's one of the Bartingtons that we use for our balloons and sounding rockets. So also scientific grade, that I'll get out there and stick it next to the Tangerine mag. And see how they compare. The one thing I need to put out there, though, is a problem in comparing data, because these things are all going to have logs in different formats. So I'm not sure how one might handle that. The other side is that I'm hoping to get some time working with various prototype receivers that will be feeding into this project. See if I can get familiar with the coding for those guys, because I understand we're going to need some FPGA help along the way. So back to Net.
Fine business. Next on the list is Dev. Go ahead, Dev.
Good evening, everyone. So we are having a good start of the new year here in Scranton. I took holidays during the holidays. I did not work much, and now I'm gradually getting back to the work. I spend the day debugging the chop sounder 2 code developed by UHA. So I'm trying to achieve a small task here, which I hope I will be able to in not a long time. Thank you.
Okay, very good. And next on the list is Gary, AF8A. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Happy 2021. Not much to add other than it's pretty obvious that a lot of groundwork has been done up to this point, and that 2021 should be a pretty productive year, and we should see a lot of exciting things happen. So looking forward to that. Back to Net.
Very good. You're just right. And next on the list, let's see, we've already had Greg. So Homan's here. So go ahead, Homan.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Happy New Year to all. Yeah, things have been going slowly. I've been just slowly working on documentation and stuff, but otherwise nothing really particular to report.
Very good.
Back to you.
Well, next on the list, we have James, KG4DSG. Go ahead, James.
Well, Happy New Year to all. I'm just sitting here listening in. I do have a comment for Bill. Do you know anything about GQRX? Never heard of it?
No, not familiar with it. No.
It's an SDR application, but it's built on GNU radio, and it's completely open source. And it's got a full screen waterfall you might want to steal.
But it is quite elaborate.
Oh yes, yes.
If you dig into the code, there's a lot of pieces there.
I haven't looked at it, but I know it's available. So with that, back to Net.
I'll take a look at it. I always go down these rabbit holes, and then come up 2 weeks later and says, well, it turns out we can't use this after all. It's normal.
Okay, let's see. After James, I guess John would be the next on the list. Go ahead, John.
Let's see, what did I get done? After Christmas, I delved into a project for school, which was a 4-inch high LED clock for the wall that does UTC time. Got the boards laid out and shipped, or they're shipping from Shenzhen, China, even as we speak. I got 2 250-foot runs of the Cat6 cable pulled through my outdoor piping system. So I now have a working Cat6 cable from the shack here in the basement out to behind the shed, so I can put in the magnetometer stuff. Yep. The next thing to do is I've got the pipe figured out. I just have to plug it together and start making it work, but I haven't made the code for that work yet. Also spent a fair amount of time shipping and helping people set up systems. Like Nathaniel mentioned, I got his going. I got Bill's going. I've got another one in Columbus I've got to get going sometime this week. And then I've got 4 more I've got to ship. So I've run into a problem on the Raspbian that it no longer recognizes the sound card. It also seems to be grabbing it, and I can't use it as a USB device, and I have to figure that little snag out before I can ship the 4 cards. So if anybody's got experience with the sound drivers on the Raspbian OS talk to me. Other than that, haven't been doing much of anything. Back to net.
Sounds like you're just wasting your time away. No, I'm just joking. Next on the list is Jonathan, KC3EEY. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hi, everybody. I don't have too much to report. I was doing some experimentation with the TI audio board. And I found out that I do not need an external power supply. It is recognized as a sound card on a lot of operating systems. In fact, I was just playing around with it now, and when I Zoom changed over to the TI audio USB sound card that it comes up with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it running on my FreeBSD system and see if I could get the pulse per second into one of the audio outputs and see if I can get the timing system of VLFRX tools running through it. Other than that, I've been doing some small work on my VLF receivers, some of the mechanical work with the boxes and enclosures, and I've also been playing around with some of my seismic stuff. Scotty, I'm very happy that you're okay. I've known a lot of people that were having a rough time, so I'm glad that you're okay. John, I have used a sound card with Raspbian for my Raspberry Pi VLF capture system. I don't know what problem that you're having in detail, but I could discuss it with you later if you like. See if I have any input. Other than that, there's not too much going on. Back to the net.
Yeah, the problem showed up right after the latest OS upgrade, so I made the mistake of upgrading the systems before I sent them out, and I shot myself in the foot. Back to net.
Oh. Well, Dan might have something to add to that. So next on the list, let's see. Looks like Jules, K2KG. Go ahead, Jules.
Yes, KGJ, but that's all right.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, again, I'm really happy to see Scotty back. And Scotty, thank you very much. I got the board. Appreciate it. And you're looking pretty good, actually, for having gone through that. Yeah. John, I've also used the Raspbian with a sound card, but not the current version, and had no problems with it. This was with a insect sound recording system I did a couple of years ago. But yeah, I'd be curious to know what they changed in the latest update as well. I now have all three of my RM3100 boards, one dual installation and one single, running under a Python script, which is accurate to 1 second. So that's collecting data, and I've been working with Homan to decide to try to determine what we're seeing as possibly an anomaly in the let me call it the orthogonality of the three sensors on the RM3100 board, that independent of the specific orientation, whether we use a Z-axis sensor as a Z-axis sensor or flip it 90 degrees and use the X-axis as Z-axis, it still delivers an error that is about 1500 nanoteslas. The other orientations are fine, and it could be the geomagnetic field predictions for this particular area from the online calculator I'm using, it may be off by a bit, and that may be the cause. But anyway, we're still working on that. And that's about it. Back to Net.
Well, fine business. And next on the list is Michael, AAAK. Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Me too on the punch card.
Oh,
They feed real nice into a laser printer.
oh,
Back to you, Dave.
fine business. And then we talked to Scotty, so we have Tom. Go ahead, Tom. N5EG.
My mouse is not clicking. I talked with Dave Whitten a little bit, and he gave me some advice on WX Python and tool chains to use. Some of the popular tool chains are kind of unsupported now, so I got a VM spun up with the WX Python and the GUI builder tool, and I've got another VM spun up with Qt5. So looking at just doing some softwares for register manipulation on the modules once they're ready to start to be debugged. Nothing fancy, just something to play with the register. So back to Net.
Well, fine business. I was going to suggest to Bill he could play with Phosphor, but that may be overkill for what he wants.
Yeah, I've used Phosphor, and on a GTX 660, I can get over 200 mega samples per second display on Phosphor, so it's pretty fast.
But Bill, that's more points than you were talking about.
Yeah. Also, it's a much bigger bandwidth than I'm looking at too. I'm looking at, maybe 10 hertz.
Yeah.
Bandwidth. I mean, but you can squeeze a lot of points into 10 hertz if you sample it long enough.
Well, anyway, it's in GNU Radio, so I thought, well,
yeah, it has a couple of neat features. One of which is that will show transient signals in a very light color on the display, and so if things shoot through the passband, you'll grab them and they'll sort of turn colors as they fade out. But I've not seen anything else that will capture transients as well as GR Phosphor.
Well, that's kind of, I don't know how much Scott had to do with developing that, but that was what he was always after, is finding little transients. So anyway, sorry, we're open for general discussion.
Yeah, Dave Whitten, did you want to elaborate on your email to the list about the timing problem with the magnetometers?
Well, it's not with the magnetometers. It's with the software that we were using to read the magnetometer. The stuff I have written up till now has been, it started out as just a little hack to first get some data out altogether, at all, and then more and more to tweak it. But still, it was just a polling loop that was not, and I had no real concern about precision as it was going around. But Jules has, pushed the envelope quite a lot, and he was seeing some difference between my code, and he had written stuff in Python, but he was using a scheduler function to kick off the in Python, a fairly accurate scheduler that's available. I plan to go back and incorporate that sort of functionality in the C. But at the same time, I think John and the people using the grape and stuff need something that they can use and will write their log file format, or their data format. And so I think I'm going to just freeze work on the older you know, the experimental code, get a newer program that I was writing that took out a lot of the junk. But it's been kind of hanging in the wind for a couple of weeks. I'm going to try and get that knocked out so that's useful to John and company. And but I'm not going to put the scheduler function in because I'm not at all yet, because I'm not at all sure anybody really needs that kind of precision, you know, with the initiation of the samples. You know, there's just jitter in them because, and sometimes you'd miss one, at least it looked like you'd miss one. And it's, I can do that. There's seems to be about 3 or 4 different levels. You can kind of go in Linux from, you know, a dumb polling loop to all the way down to the task switch scheduler. I think you can get at most of it somehow, but there are some intermediate ones that should be pretty good, and they make good sense. But you know, why not be precise if it doesn't cost you much? But it's going to take, you know, I'll have to experiment with that. Somebody's, you know, just, it's one of those things someone has wrapped up very nicely in Python because there was a need. But in C, you know, I'm sure they did it in C, but to do it in C myself, it takes some experimentation.
Yeah, Dave, I will say that, you know, anybody that's using RunMag, it has all the features you need to do any evaluation that we're doing at this point. Plus, you can easily change the number of samples. You can easily change the cycle count. You've got an excellent logging function. Anybody who's out there experimenting with the RM3100, just continue using the current version of RunMag because it really gives you the flexibility you need to do the evaluation at this point.
Unfortunately, it doesn't write the logging data, the log data, with file names that are organized the way that John and Bill seem to have envisioned. And there's some problems I have with a bit of it, but overall, there's, you know, there's no reason I can't do it. I just have to, you know, it's the nuisancey stuff of making sure I cover all the bases.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that I had sent you a copy of analysis.cxx, which is the module that is in FLDigi that is currently creating all these files we're saving.
Yeah.
And it has the creation of everything you're looking for in there.
Yeah.
In addition to that, I wanted to point out that the Grape Gen 2 is going to have a GPIO bit dedicated to the 1 PPS coming off of the GPS module. So you will have direct access to that in the C code. And I'm going to be using that as a trigger for each 1 second epoch of data.
Well,
so there won't be any operating system overhead in terms of when that shows up.
We can see about using that in the future. At some point, this becomes less of a testing program and more of a simulator for what would for the essentially maybe almost a shim for in place of the it's doing some of the things that are done on the DE in the other unit, but we're doing it in software here, and we'll try to incorporate some of those things on there if that's the way you want to go with it. It's just a long ways from where I started, and it's not a problem at all.
Yeah, I would encourage if anybody's writing software for the creation of the file names to look at the document I created, because I've tried to solve a few problems by coming up with that document. And ultimately, if we all go our separate paths, and I've been on projects that have done this before, when it all comes together, Bill Engelke's head is going to explode because everybody's got different file formats. And I'm trying to avoid that by having a something that's at least pointing in the same direction.
I completely agree with that, and I
If there's
don't
any
want
problem,
to.
let's talk about it, because it's
Sure, sure.
that's what it's there for.
Well, it's not that no, I completely agree with that. It's just that there are a few points in there that didn't contemplate some of the uses, like, you have a radio, I don't know where, I've got it all mixed up. I was gonna make some notes,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
didn't get that,
Yeah, please send it to me and I'll put it in the document.
Yeah, because
That's-
to me, the magnetometer can easily be used without any radio at all,
right?
Or any, a whole lot of these components. And there's some redundancy in the file name a little bit. I think I don't know. I'm not sure I understand. I read it over and over again, and I'm this way with documents. I like that. I keep finding new things I missed. And
Yeah, well, I know Nathaniel had some ideas about being able to look at the file name and understand by looking at it where it was and who created it and things like that and what it is just by the file name. So that's where a lot of that came from. But if it's creating problems, let's fix it.
No, it's like if we have a day's log file, I'm not absolutely clear, but the date stamp in the file name itself, is that just UTC month, day, year,
Hour, minute, second. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's the minute seconds that didn't seem very important to me, because that's all
Well, I originally
inside
had
the file.
just the date, but then
I think
Nathaniel asked for the time, so that I put that in there.
My thought with that is if you stop recording the data file at some point. So normally you have one data file per day or one data file every 2 hours or whatever. But like, let's say all of a sudden you stop recording data and then you want to create a new data file. Well, if you have the hours and the minutes in the file name, then you know that you're not going to conflict with the earlier file name from that particular.
Okay, well, that's in all of this. I've been working to make sure that there's always one file per day, but that every entry in that file is accurately stamped in full detail. So if there are missing samples, which at the moment there are once in a while, when and where they occurred.
And the other
and if
thought,
it ends early or
yeah,
starts late.
Another thought with that too is that for some of the instruments, the files are going to be larger than others. And so for those instruments, you may not want to have a full day's worth of data in a single file. You may want to break it up into an hourly basis or something like that.
Well, this was all specifically concerning and I gather that the file naming convention is universal for all the different kinds of data that you might be collecting.
It is, but it isn't, because Bill Engelke is working with a RF format, digital RF format,
Digital
which is
RF,
completely different. So that doesn't apply.
Yeah.
So in Dave's automatic system, your date time would be the date at 0000, because his program creates a new file every day at whatever time it rolls over.
And if it's interrupted, it would be it would start up where it left off.
It's exactly what the grape does.
Yeah. Okay.
I only create one analysis file with a single date on it per day. If it has a 2-hour block in there, you didn't collect data. It just, the date internally, it accounts for that, but there's only one file generated per day right now.
Okay. Also, I was looking at the fields inside in the data that's logged from the magnetometer, and it's dates. I think I was looking at it and saw that there was X, Y, and Z.
Now I'm envisioning you're going to have the date, the temperature, X, Y, and Z
two temps you had in there.
in,
Yeah,
in
but
manifest
X, Y, and
list.
Z-
And then
it's-
in the metadata, you're going to have your calibration vector.
Okay, well, the only other thing in there that I personally kind of like to see, and it's pretty easy for me to calculate it in the software I'm writing, is the total field.
Mhm.
You know, as an additional thing, and I think a lot of times people just want to look at that total field for one reason or another.
Sure.
You know,
And there's
as a
nothing wrong with it,
validation.
because we do that same kind of thing in the radio
Okay,
stuff that we do on our
I
rep level.
just didn't want to add anything that I didn't see in the document. That
So one other thing that Dave and I have come up with is, and probably Jules is doing this too, we have multiple devices that we're testing, and I've been just using my call sign with 1 or 2 or 3 after it.
Yeah, well, that's where the node stuff in the document I created, and I'd be more than happy to assign you a node number, because I explain how they're assigned and why they are assigned.
So would you assign me 3 node numbers?
I've got 3 nodes running at my house right now.
Okay.
Okay.
But how easy is, I mean, this is going to be a big task for you to keep up with all these node assignments.
What's going to happen is when the database goes online with Bill, he will be assigning them automatically.
Okay.
Right now, I just started it up because I knew we were going to get into trouble with everybody wanting one. And right now, I think I've got 25 nodes assigned.
Well, I have
It's
data
a spreadsheet.
that goes back to June for the magnetometer.
Okay.
A lot of that was inside the house, so I was just testing to see what it would do. But I have, quite a few months of data.
Sure. Well, I've got data on my one grape that goes back to May of 2019.
Okay.
So I've been collecting, data for almost 2 years on that system.
Okay.
So I understand what you're saying.
But as far as assigning the node numbers, we could almost make a web page with a little database, a SQLite database or something behind anything that would just would allow known users, you log into it and then you can request another.
Well, the document I wrote, I basically alluded to the fact that Bill is going to be doing that with the database since he's running it. He's really in control of all that.
When you add a device, it'll automatically generate a node number for it.
Right. But that's going to be a year and a half out or so.
Right.
Is my understanding.
Well,
and I'm concerned
and
about the
Dave's
here
wanting
and
to
now.
log this data and keep it as close to the format that we'll eventually use as possible.
Great. So just tell me how many node numbers you want, and you got them. It's that simple.
Okay.
It's nothing harder than that. There's nothing sacred about it. I just made a comment in the document that node numbers 100 and less are for development. And we've used 25 so far, and I've got another 75 to go. So,
Well, I would say that everybody Scotty sent magnetometers to, you ought to assign
they're
a
going to need,
number.
yeah, exactly. So that's not a problem. I just took it upon myself to grab them and put them into a spreadsheet before it turned into a total rat's nest.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it will be handed over to Bill's engine to do this automatically and keep track of it. And there's going to be stuff in there that is going to be considered private, like your cell phone number or things like that for contact information, which is why I did not put the spreadsheet up on the document website or the GitHub account. I don't want to do that for personal personal privacy reasons. But that's the kind of stuff you have to be aware of. But if you need a node number, by all means, just send me an email.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I look at the document that's kind of a fait accompli, and suddenly see it doesn't fit with what we're doing, maybe you've anticipated these things. I just don't realize that because you got
one of the fields is
us.
magnetometer on the description. I actually have a magnetometer entry for the description of a node that has one on it. So
yeah.
So
we can talk about that offline, Dave.
Okay, because I can easily imagine me running a number of nodes.
I can see a node
with no
just
radios.
magnetometer.
Yeah, I don't. I have little reason to, I don't have any antennas. So,
Right. And if that's
yeah.
that's within the spec. I mean, that's fine.
Okay, okay, I was afraid it was not.
No.
Mhm.
But if I need
Okay.
to be more explicit about how we write that, I need to know that so I can update it.
Yeah.
Because like I said,
That's
I
okay.
took a stab in the dark and I put it out there last July.
Hey, and that's commendable.
I know Bill read it and Nathaniel read it and a couple other people sort of glossed at it, but it's one of those things, it's a good, resource for insomnia, but no, it's not something you want to be reading all the time. So
No.
Get it.
I'm very appreciative of it. It's just
but let's fix it if it doesn't meet the requirements, because it's a stake in the ground to say this is wrong, we need to do this, and that's exactly what I'm trying to accomplish.
I just don't want to have anyone have to back up
No,
at any point
yeah.
or
Let's
bifurcate
fix it
things.
now and get it right. Yeah, that's the purpose of it. And you're not going to hurt your feelings, trust me.
And you contemplate capturing data to some location, then checking it for things like, extraneous characters, and then once it's acceptable, moving it to another location for upload. Is that
What I'm doing now is, at the end of the day, I've noticed that when a Raspberry Pi has a hard power failure, it closes the file system, but the file allocation table doesn't point to the end of the last block. So the entire block gets filled with null characters. And when it starts up, it keeps those null characters and then it keeps adding to it. So I've got a program at the end of the day that goes through byte by byte and looks for a null character. If it sees it, it takes them out and scrunches them all together. And then I understand also what happens with the timestamp. And we fix the timestamp to get back in the sequence.
Yeah.
And we have that all written and working. But it's something that if you're doing CSV files that where valid data does not include the null character, we can apply that. But like, for example, Bill's RF data probably will have a null character as a valid character, and we can't do that. So, but it's something we need to talk about. And like I say, I've done a lot of this legwork already because I've had to account for it.
No, it's excellent.
And I want to share it so everybody doesn't have to recreate it. But the biggest problem is I just don't know what I've done.
It's excellent. It was just that we're kind of, we've been operating independently,
Yes.
and which of course is what we want to avoid.
Until we have a platform that everybody can play with, it's kind of hard to interact with everybody because we're not talking about the same thing.
Absolutely.
If I had a grape station on everybody's lap, you could be able to, oh yeah, it does this when this happens, and we could talk about it. But until we have all grapes and tangerines out there running, it's hard to get together and say and point out problems because nobody else has experienced them yet and had to solve the problem. So in that respect, I'm pretty far much ahead of everybody on the grape because I've had to solve a lot of system problems already that I've come up against and had to fix because otherwise things break.
Yeah.
So
no, this is great. Some of these things we won't find out until it
so
is
you
too
actually
late.
try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the nature of the beast. But it's best to anticipate as many as possible, I think.
Yeah, the one that was the weirdest is when you shut the power off and the file system gets corrupted and it throws the null characters in the file and it starts appending to after that. And once I found that footprint and I documented it in that document because I have an actual hex dump of what the insertion looks like and how I go through and pull it out and then back annotate the date stamps.
Yeah.
That's all in the document.
My code doesn't have, any, it's nothing special, but it doesn't have any sense of atomicity of a record per se, but I do flush frequently, early and often. I've always been of that.
Well, I know FLDigi opens the file once a second, writes it, and then closes it.
Okay, I don't go that far.
So if the system shuts itself down, the end file allocation table has the right end block for the last block of data in the disk sector. If you just shut power off, it hasn't done that yet, but FLDigi does each epoch is open, write, close. So it's always flushing the buffer because I've never seen it lose a partial string of one ASCII entry per second. It's usually that whole block gets a bunch of null characters depending on where you are in the 2K bit or 2K bytes of the block. And we wrote some programs to be able to flush that out and pull it out. So that was really the most bizarre problem we've run into. But we were having problems with something, power goes out or somebody trips over the cord and pulls the plug out. You get that. But when the thing starts up again, it takes off on the same file because it looks at the date and figures it out where it's supposed to be. And if that file's been open, it just keeps appending to it. So I only have one analysis file per day. And the assumption is right now with the Grape 1 that it's one frequency. And Nathaniel wants me to be looking into the ability to be able to change frequency midday and then have all this stuff happen. But one of the precursors, in fact, I just pushed up a document to the documentation directory now for how to change frequency at the end of the UTC today for Grape Generation 1, which I've sent, I think, to Bill, and I know I sent it to Nathaniel. And that's just for Gen 1 because, like I say, Gen 1 is just a proof of concept for the radio. Gen 2 is really going to be the first release for this project. But these kinds of problems are what we're running into and figuring out now, which will help.
Well, if just in the back of your mind, you can kind of put me on the end of that list, the people you send stuff to, even if it's not real, doesn't really concern me much.
Okay.
I'm good. It'd be nice to feel like I know what's happening. And
if you want to read anything that's probably the most valuable in that document, read the day in the life of a grape.
Yeah.
Because I walk through how the whole day's data collection goes, what happens if something goes wrong, how it fixes it, and all that stuff. So you get an idea of what the data flow looks like.
Sure.
So that's only 2 pages, so it's not so bad.
Sure. No,
and I got pictures and all that kind of stuff from data dumps and what the file structure looks like, what the like a hex dump or what the error file looks like, and why I keep it bad that Bill's been coming up with and stuff like that. So it's all in there.
I'm working from version 13 of that whole file. Worked it very carefully, but all I had was version 4 originally, and I have a copy of version 4, and then I have version 13. And
wow.
And so I missed a lot of intermediate stuff, didn't know much about it. So I think I've overwritten version 4. Now,
well, I'm going to be getting contact with you pretty soon when I start getting the magnetometer stuff ready to go. I still got to ship out between 4 and 6 more grapes. And once I'm finished making the wine with those, I'll be able to get back to the magnetometer.
Okay.
Or people stop whining about it. I have to think about that.
Yeah, that's the real test. Okay, great.
Back to net.
Well, we're in open discussion, so.
Has anybody given any thought about the magnetometer if there's an issue with the XYZ interchangeability of putting 3
there has to be
in the ground in the 3 different orientations?
There has to be somewhere in the metadata what is the orientation?
Yeah,
would that be done by the calibration vector?
Yeah, if you do the rotation of the board itself 90 degrees about the y-axis on the board, that turns z into minus x, and it turns x into z. I'm sorry, wrong way around. It negates the one of them, and it's fairly easy to determine that. If you see a negative sign, then you know you've done the rotation.
But I'm saying when you have a calibration vector for your 0 reference, wouldn't that sort of pop out from that?
You probably should.
Because aren't we really interested in relative changes and not absolute numbers?
That's a question for Homan.
Yeah, that is correct. Variation rather than absolute value baseline.
So once you stick the thing in the ground and you take, say, 1,000 samples and you get a fairly nice tight standard deviation of let's say 10 nanoteslas for if you subtract this number, you get zeros for all axes, and you put that in your metadata. And then when your data collection comes, you use that vector to subtract from the read to store as the data. So ideally, if things in a perfect world, nothing changes, all your X, Y, and Z numbers would be 0 for that whole day. Is that really what, am I understanding what the procedure is here correctly? Because then your vector would be, this would be telling you what the difference is from what you consider normal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but basically, what you do is to subtract the baseline. Not the let me take back. Not the baseline. Maybe the average value of the day. Subtract it, then what you see is going to be the variation. So no matter what you do, I think you will still see the variation. And what we really interested in actually some type of variation that is associated with big events such as like substorm or geomagnetic storm, or it could be, if you're lucky enough, we could see some kind of wave activity which can have some sinusoidal component.
Sure.
Right. If you look at the intermagnet data, that's the way it's produced there or displayed there. Namely, there's an average. So at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, it winds up at the same number. But in between, you see the variation into 24 hours.
So is the average calculated at the end of the data set for the entire data set, or are you using a previous day's average to start the next day's average, and then you modify it at the end of the day?
Right now, there's no average. It's
just absolute numbers.
Post processed.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think for now it's better to just report the entire value and go from there. I mean, for some stations, for example, like Antarctic station that we run, just for the sake of saving data amount, we report only the variation. But I guess saving transmission is not a big concern for us, right?
The numbers
are very much.
These numbers aren't that big.
Right. So we don't really concerned about, we're talking about iridium communication, which is very much limited for Antarctic measurement, but we're not talking about, we are highly civilized. So I guess we don't, that's not. So I think everything can be taken care of afterwards, like post-processing. So what we report is the entire value, and then let's think about it later.
That makes sense, because that's sort of in line with what Nathaniel had asked for, in terms of we have the raw data and we have access to all of that. So in 2 years, when we change what we want to look for, we have the raw data to work with, and nothing that's been manipulated. So
yeah. So then the philosophy is then minimizing the local processing, keeping raw data, keeping all the raw data, saving all the raw data, and then you can process it later.
Right.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yep.
Okay.
We always keep the very original data. That's the engineering data.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Is it still all right for me to capture the total field? I like the total field in there, and
well, one thing that Dave does is he has a very nice output page based on the settings at the time you're collecting it. And it would be nice to somehow get that, at least that information incorporated into the metadata.
Yeah, because
that's
change the metadata file, that'll save it for you every day.
Yeah.
That's but that doesn't correspond. A lot of it doesn't correspond to anything in the existing metadata.
But I'm saying is it tells how things were collected. And the other thing that I find useful for myself is, there's half a dozen parameters you can set. And right now I'm using the parameters that Jules said and the rotation that Jules has recommended. But when my setup broke, retrieving which parameter set to use took me a little time to figure out.
That's exactly.
So I would like to have like a line in there that is this is the parameter, the command line that fired the program.
Yeah, that's exactly what the metadata file is intended for. Is my internet's going crazy here.
Well, you're still coming through.
It's telling me my internet connection's unreliable. Ooh.
Dave, just a quick question. Did you
Ignore that.
mean by the total field that you just mentioned? Isn't that just a simple mathematical calculation?
Yes,
Like
it
square
is.
bracket?
Yes.
That's why I keep asking about it. I just like to stick it in there.
It's the
It's a
mean
vector.
squares.
But the
It's
file
got
size for a
magnitude and
24-hour
direction.
period isn't very large.
Yeah, our file sizes are very reasonable.
They're about a meg.
Okay.
The way I've been
Pies
capturing.
are about 4 meg a day.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Right.
Maybe they're bigger than I thought, but well, actually, the ones I capture, I hide a bunch of the data some of the time for myself, but 86,000 samples odd times however much the line length is, plus whatever the header is. Now the headers, you know, the headers kind of free form for it seems to me, you know, for
Have you run the PSWS info program yet that I sent you?
yes, I have.
And that's the actual header that gets written out every day.
Right. Yeah, and I see the stuff. I'm not this it's just not
so
it was just not the way I think about some of the stuff, I guess.
So
you know, it's a
I
different
also
style.
want to add that John, I'm running all my stuff on an Odroid, and so there's another level of difference.
I'm not familiar with an Odroid. Is that
Well, this was what we recommended for the Tangerines originally,
okay?
which is it has a GPIO header that's compatible. So that allows us to hook it up. But I'm not using any pies right now myself. And Dave, I believe, is running pies, and I believe Jules is running pies.
I have
So,
N2s also.
but I wanted, so I'm an Odroid N2 is what I'm running.
Is an Odroid based on a Debian distribution, or is it a Mac or a
No, it's an Ubuntu.
It's Ubuntu.
Okay, so it is Mac or OS based on a.
Yes.
Well, it's an ARM processor. You can
It's an
install
ARM.
Okay.
Install a wide variety of different operating systems on it if you want. So, but it's
Because I think the Pi is also ARM based. It's a quad core ARM.
yes.
So
yeah, well, these are hex cores, but that's the main difference. No, it's not. I think
it really isn't.
It's very little different. It's very little different.
Yeah, the Odroid's a little bit faster, but it's comparable.
Cool.
So I just wanted you to know that not everybody's on a Pi.
Yeah.
So Pi quirks may not always apply to me.
Yeah, the big quirk as far as a Pi goes is that it's writing to an SD card ordinarily. And that may well impact, you know, some of the miswrites that you see, you know, if there's a power drop.
Use a cheap SD card. I've had some fail on me.
Yeah.
You can get into trouble with that.
Well, you know, the earliest Pis, the Pi 1s and 2s were hideous about, you know, if you powered them off, you'd pretty much needed to reflash it every time.
Pretty much trashed it.
Yeah. And so unless you did a lot of syncs or something, and but they're better now, but still the you know, the others that have eMMC flash that they write to, that's physically, you know, in place, usually that works better. And the Odroids do that, have that. That's one of the things. But then there's some Pis also, you know, that are slowly becoming available. Well, there's Pi 3s that have eMMC flash, lots of them, the CM3s. But
here's the thing, though, to remember. At least on the Tangerine side, we're going to be writing a lot of data. And you know, a ring buffer, I've figured out with if you're handling 6 channels at 8 kilosamples per second. That's 13 gig of data per day. Now you're going to destroy an SD card in no time. So we're really recommending that for the Tangerine that you get an external hard drive. And in fact, use a hard drive that is set up for a video surveillance recording, or the kind of drive that goes into one of those video recording boxes that you have for your TV set. They run all the time and just writing constantly, and they'll
Boot
last.
drives?
Well, the Western Digital Purple series is.
The Purple series, okay. Because I know the Red series is set up for data storage, but I think Purple is a higher bandwidth.
Well, they have a lot of memory cache in them. So I've noticed this when I'm storing data to it, as fast as the local host will pump it out, the light only lights up once in a while. So it's putting a whole bunch of stuff in cache, and then it spits it out in a single write every now and then. And that holds down the mechanical wear and tear on the drive. So, I mean, we got to get away from the thinking about writing all this massive amount of data to little SD cards, because people won't be happy when their SD cards are failing 3 months into every experiment.
Well, that's the biggest concern for me writing the WAV file when I'm copying 4 channels on the Grape for Generation 2, because I'm going to be collecting 8K bytes times 4 channels per second, and that's going to really tear up the SD card.
Well, you want to just you got to architect it to have a hard drive in the mix.
Okay, I will keep that in mind, because it doesn't. I'm looking at the sustained write speed of the SD cards, and it's getting scary.
They're not designed for that. And you can get a very nice, fast, large disk now for under $100. So
yeah.
I actually saw a Samsung 970 M2 solid state drive that was $59 at Newegg, and it, with the new USB booting capability of the Raspberry Pi, as of the last issue of Raspbian or Raspberry Pi OS, it's possible to boot off of the SSD drive.
Well,
actually,
question.
If you're going to be doing a lot of writes, a mechanical hard drive is actually superior to any kind of solid state device, because it doesn't wear out. I'm sorry, Nathaniel, go ahead.
Yeah, are there any of the USB flash drives, are any of them any better than the micro SDs?
It's the same stuff.
Same stuff.
Because the reason I'm.
What do you mean like USB thumb drives?
Yeah, because
those are worse.
They're worse, yeah.
We tried using those for the AM Doppler receivers, and they go out for powder periodically.
So what do you use for the AM Doppler receivers?
We're using solid state drives.
Solid state drives, okay.
But it's a fairly low data rate.
Yeah.
We're using regular solid state drives.
Right. The the Grape, even when it's recording like the 8K of spectrum data, it's going to be a similar data rate to your AM Doppler experiment.
Right.
Yeah. And so like if the Grape, I know that hard drives are, under $100, but if we're trying to keep the Grape at about $100 too, that, that basically doubles the cost of the Grape. So it'd be better to be able to keep it with just the micro SD card, at least for the Grape, not for the Tangerine.
If you want an exercise in frustration, get one of the Micro Center thumb drives. I can kill one of those in 3 minutes.
Nice. The free ones that they hand out?
Yeah, they're crap. They overheat and die. The charger pump on them is lousy.
You got what you paid for? Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much.
Can you save the 8K? Let's say, I don't know. Can you get it? Save it to RAM disk and send it out.
It's the sustained write speed to the drive that you run into.
Right. So I mean,
most of those are not, they're, 90 bytes a second or, something like that. And it's just,
yeah. So what if you don't save the data locally and you just send it out over to the server right away?
as long as the server can keep up with it, that'd probably be the better way to do it. But you're probably not going to be doing that over Wi-Fi. That's going to be over Ethernet.
Just buck up and get one of the Western Digital Purple 18 terabyte drives, a mere $525. Amazon. But you can get a
it's a
single
bargain.
terabyte for $49, a Western Digital Purple. So
yeah,
only 1 terabyte, but pretty cheap.
Yeah.
Well, that actually would probably be good for a lot of applications, because if you're going to store, as I said before, if you're going to store 6 channels, 8 kilosamples, you can do that with 13 gigabytes per day. And if you run your ring buffer at 24 hours, you don't even need a terabyte. You don't even need 100 gig.
Okay,
So,
well, the knee in the curve here for these is 4 terabytes. 4 terabytes, $95. And then
yeah,
you go
that's the one that I have.
6 terabytes is 140. So 4 seems to be the sweet spot, under $100.
Yeah, for me, the big issue then is I can't supply power for the drive through the USB port.
No, it has a separate power supply, and it's a hard drive. That's a big hard drive that you would
It's a USB.
putting into a PC. So
Okay.
you have to buy a little frame for it.
Yeah,
It has
those are like
power
$10.
The mechanical drive is not solid state. So
yeah, we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it, but that sounds like it's probably the better way to go. One of those 4 terabyte purple drives, external enclosure, and then you can stream stuff to that.
Yeah, it's like 6 times the size of the Raspberry Pi.
What I've been doing with my VLF Raspberry Pi system is that I keep all of the OS functions and all of the utility programs on the SD card, and data collection is done on a USB stick formatted to ext2. And when that USB stick eventually wears out, which probably would wear out in a couple of years of daily writes, you just get a new one, and that would hopefully solve the problem of power with an external hard drive. The Raspberry Shake project, for their Raspberry Pi seismometers, they also recommend the same sort of situation where all of the external wave data or all of the wave data is saved to a USB stick. And so far, I've had success with it with my testing.
That's actually exactly where I was going with my question with the USB sticks. Basically, keep the operating system and the code on the micro SD, but then you use relatively cheap USB sticks, and then when they go, but it's not catastrophic.
Yeah, I'm thinking with the way technology is moving forward, when we readdress this, when we're actually doing it in maybe 6 months with the Grape 2, there may be a cheaper or better solution that came out for it. Maybe a solid state M.2 drive might be better than a USB 3 drive or something like that, but who knows? It's constantly changing, so it's just clear that we can't use the SD card that the OS is on to try and save the data, even if it's 64 or 128 gig. It runs out of space pretty quick.
Yeah, that's why I think the USB thumb drive might be a viable alternative for the Grape for the data storage, because it's relatively cheap compared to a hard drive.
If we can get the right
long term, but you can't do an acquisition to it. That's what we were doing.
And
they just stopped
acquisition to it.
Well, you can't be continuously writing to it because they just stopped taking data for a while and then start up again. So we were getting discontinuities in the data.
Yeah, what's going on is the solid state drive itself has a charge pump on it that actually creates a negative voltage that they're biasing and charging all the little islands on the transistors. and that thing overheats. When it does, it shuts down.
Yeah.
It takes it 5 to 10 minutes to cool off before it'll start pumping again, before it start writing. And that's what's going on.
Can you cache it in RAM and then?
You don't know when it's going to quit.
Okay.
It doesn't give
Yeah,
you any indication that it's dying. It just shuts off.
So the solid state drive of the same size is not that much more, and that's what we're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pack it in dry ice.
I like the way you think, Scotty.
It'll be
Take
fast.
it to Antarctica.
There ought to be a good market for dry ice nowadays.
Yeah, there already is. It's got a lot of COVID vaccine in it.
Yeah, Pfizer is using it all right now.
Yep.
Just in your hole in your backyard, Dave. You know.
Yeah, that's right.
Frozen
It's full of water, frozen.
I looked at the grocery store this evening just to be just out of curiosity in the dry ice thing, and they had a good supply. It's only in football season that we run low.
Actually, it's impacting the cheese makers the most because they use that for slowing down the processing of the fermenting of the cheese.
Right, I'd heard that.
Bloody murder because it's going to shut them down.
Yeah, we got a lot of good cheese makers here. I'm wondering how they're doing.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So it makes you long for the days of toilet paper shortage?
Not entirely.
I think they're going to find out that the Defense Production Act overrides the cheese makers.
Yep.
Or in this case.
I'm going to
So
have
there'll
to
be a run on cheese now.
I'm going to say goodbye. And Scotty, I'll send you those boards.
Okay, will do. And you want me to send you the replacement to you or to Dave?
It doesn't matter either way.
Okay, because you guys see each other?
Yeah, we see. I was over at his. I went over and picked up a board yesterday at his house. So.
Okay.
73.
Do you need another
73.
73, Tom.
Do you need another magnetometer RM3100 or not?
It would be nice to have two just in case. You know, I had one that I had from way back in June. And that's the one I'm using right now. That belonged to Dave, didn't it?
Probably. I don't know. I bought a lot of them.
Seems like we bought some spares, so I'll check and see what we got.
If you have one, that'd be nice to have a. Well, I'm testing them.
Hey, if it's going to be on the air, I'll send you one.
Yes.
I'm going to throw in another thing I forgot to mention, that Dave and I were discussing the ability to test up to 10 magnetometers in the same physical condition at one time.
10 of them now?
Yes.
Well,
and
Jules has two right now.
Yeah, I've got more than that. I've got five,
Well,
five or six.
You got six, but two in one system.
Right, but the technical aspect, since they only have 3 addresses or 4 addresses rather per, that's the only thing you can do is set 2021, 22, 23. That's it. So I have an I2C multiplexer, however, which lets me to do up to 8 banks of those devices, and I can fit on a 4x6 vector card. I can easily, actually a 4x5 vector card, I can fit 10 units.
Okay, so the next production one, we're just going to send them all to you.
Yeah. So I could actually test 10 units at one time in the same environment.
Wow.
Hey,
That's if you bring the address lines out, so you can do 4, you can strap 4 different ones per I2C, right?
Exactly, right.
Okay.
I'll send you my calibrated portable black hole for you to be able to check the magnetometers with.
Sounds good.
Now my wife has a 3.5 Tesla
imager,
3.5 Tesla MR machine.
Ooh, I bet
that'll get your attention.
Actually, they're putting in a 7, so but
it'll pull the fillings right out of your teeth. You know?
Right.
So how far away can you get and still detect that with our magnetometer?
Well, that's a good question. I've kind of wanted to find out, but you know, they start to frown at me when I'm wandering around with a little pieces of PVC pipe and battery packs down over at the medical center. It's been I've done worse, but it's it's an open question at the moment.
Well, it's like, remember that girl who got arrested at Logan Airport because she wired up some LEDs and a message to her boyfriend
Yes.
to meet him at the airport, and the information people said she had a bomb around her neck or something. Oh, it's horrible. And she was an
Oh my
MIT
God.
student, and MIT refused to stand behind her, which I
wow.
think is really stupid.
I remember somebody put something up on a bridge or something in
I'll
in
see you
Boston.
guys.
Take care.
Take care, 7-3s.
7-3, 7-3. Yeah, we had some situations like that because the organization I worked for deals with interstate safety, and they were putting some cameras up on a bridge overpass they could collect video and then measure the speed of the trucks going by and stuff like that. And they were held at gunpoint by the sheriff's department on a couple of occasions until it found out that we had written all the software that was running everything in the sheriff's car. So, but okay. I mean, what they needed to wear, what we needed to have, and I don't know how long ago this was a while ago, so I don't know if it's still a problem, but you need to have a jacket that has the logo of your organization in big yellow letters across it, something that looks official.
You mean like FBI?
Yeah, in our case, it would be CAPS, Center for Advanced Public Safety, because we do all of the law enforcement software for everything in the state, as well as in Mississippi and Arkansas and Georgia, and so it's but they don't unless you're in a uniform, they don't know who you are.
Yeah, plus safety vest and a hard hat.
Yeah.
Well, that would help. Yes, it would help.
And lights on your car.
Well,
I saw a
lights on the car
spaceman
will
one
too,
time.
but yeah.
I saw a spaceman on an overpass up north of Birmingham one time on a Saturday night. It's all covered with tinfoil, head to toe.
And a tinfoil hat too. We got a lot of folks that wear those around here.
It's on my way up to Horse Bends 40, and I told the sheriff deputy, but he didn't seem very interested.
Well, we get that all the time here.
How much did you have before that?
Huh?
How much did you have to drink before that?
I was fine, clean, but I suspect some of the local characters had been at it.
Yeah.
Get up there north of Birmingham.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to say 7-3s.
7-3, John. Have a good one. We'll be in touch.
Yep.
7-3. We'll see everyone.
Everybody stay healthy. It's good to see you, Scotty. Glad you're getting on the mend. Don't do that again.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah. Well, how soon could I go out and catch it again?
Hopefully not soon.
You probably
That's
won't.
the $1 million question. They don't know yet.
Hopefully 6 months at least.
Oh, I would hope so.
Yeah, they've been saying at the University of Scranton that if you've had it within the last 90 days, you don't need to get another COVID test. So.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because I was just talking to a guy I've been working with, and he said that he thinks that he might have actually had a case of it back in December of 19. Because he says all those symptoms were described as exactly the same as what I had. It took him about 2 weeks to get over. Headache, fever, low-grade fever for a long time, and a cough and all that. And but that was way before any of the pandemic stuff actually got out, because didn't it start at the end of January in China?
Well, when they actually recognized it as a new virus, but now they're saying they found it in blood samples of people who donated blood back in like November of 2019. So it was circulating in the U.S. as early as that, and maybe earlier.
So if he really had it in December of 19, he would have antibodies still, right? Even now. So they could tell whether he had it or not if he got tested for an antibody test.
No one knows. That's the problem. No one knows.
They don't know how long the antibodies tests last.
Well, Christina has 2 roommates. Christina's the grad student that's working on this project. She had 2 grad students that went to that town in China in December for the Consumer Electronics Show and came back sick as a dog, and they had it.
Wow.
That was beginning of December.
Okay.
And she was
Well, I'm
freaking out when she found out what they had.
I've been a volunteer in the Moderna phase 3 clinical trials and got a couple of shots of something back in October. And so today or yesterday, I got an email from the university. It says, you're in the university high risk group. We want you to come in and get vaccinated immediately. And we need to know today if you're coming in. Okay, so
wow.
I called up St. Vincent's and said, here's the situation. Okay, we're going to unblind you. You're out of the study. Go get your shot. Okay, so fine.
Wow. So if you've had it, how long do you have to wait before you get vaccinated?
I don't think you have to wait.
I thought there was a waiting period for people who have been sick.
No,
I've never heard of that, but it's possible.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Who knows? You just got to call and ask them.
Yeah. Well, everybody stay healthy. 7-3.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
73.
I'm taking off to
73.
73 guys. John, I'll get in touch with you by email.
Okay, thank you.
Scotty, can I ask you a question about things that are sold on the Tapper website?
Sure.
I
may not have the answer, but
I'm looking at the TAD 1 RF distribution amplifier.
okay. One of those has been sold out, and we're waiting for parts for for another run.
It says 14 in stock.
Oh, in stock? Okay, well then there's 14 in stock.
So that's what it says. This is the thing I'm looking at. I'll put it in the chat here. I guess what I'm wondering is, so I have now a whole bunch of SDRs. I have a Grape, I have an Edis, I have the the Kiwi, all of these things, the RBN receiver. And right now I'm doing like a cascade of splitters to distribute one antenna to all of these things. Is this an appropriate way of distributing one antenna to multiple receivers?
Probably
need
It's more designed to take a 10 megahertz GPS DO and distribute it to 6 outputs.
Okay.
As opposed to RF, but I think it would work with RF also. Tell you what, drop John Ackerman an email. He designed this.
Okay.
So he will tell you right off whether it could be used in that application. But I think since the frequency range is 200 kilos to 30 meg, I think yes is the answer.
It's fairly high level and low distortion. If you give it a fairly good signal level to begin with, it should be okay. It's worth a try.
So you hook the antenna to the one port, and then you take the other 6 guys and hook them to your SDRs.
Right.
Right.
Right now, what I have is a 50 ohm splitter, then going to 2 other 50 ohm splitters, and that's giving me 4 ports.
Yeah, and the only problem I see is if at some of the low level input of your antenna, I don't know if this is going to, I don't know how, if it amplifies it, because if it amplifies it, then you got to worry about the minimum signal, I would guess.
As I remember, it doesn't amplify. It's just intended to distribute at the same level as you put in.
Okay, so it's a unity gain then?
I believe so. I think it can also be changed, as I remember. I think I have one of these, but I don't remember the details of it right off.
Okay.
Trying to find the schematic for it right now.
Yeah, so if you have any specific questions, John would be the guy to ask. He would.
Yeah, he put that one together.
But okay. Generally, it's used for references as opposed to signals. Is the way I understood it. It's a distribution of clocks, reference clocks, not necessarily.
But it is a broadband RF amplifier intended to be used as an active splitter.
And it does say 200 kilohertz to 30 meg, so broadband,
So I mean, it looks. I mean, from reading the description, it looks kind of like what I want.
Yeah.
And I guess the other question I have is, going back to discussion we've had a few weeks ago, is if I'm operating my radio, transmitting, how do is there a way to disable these things safely while I'm transmitting?
Probably not. Probably you cannot transmit into these outputs unless you have to short them or disconnect them or something.
I don't necessarily want to transmit into them. What I want to do is, like, let's say I have two antennas on my property. I have one antenna that's a dedicated receive antenna going to this thing, and I have another antenna that I'm using as my transmit receive antenna. But can I transmit on my transmit receive antenna safely while I'm running all my
Yeah.
receivers?
And that would depend on how close they are together, right? And what the coupling is.
Yeah, well, you can put protection diodes on the front end of it.
Yeah. Just back to back, 1 in 4148, limit the voltage to 0.6 of a volt or so.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's also, I don't know if it would help, but MFJ has a transmit receive relay intended for feeding SDRs. It can actually take full power.
My MFJ, like a transmit receive.
Yeah, one of the things you could
SDR
do is disconnect the antenna to this while you're transmitting on the other antenna, even if you used a relay to do it. You know, we were talking about that with Bill's kilowatt station.
Yeah, in all transceivers, like mobile transceivers, they use pin diodes to mute the radio input.
So I'm looking at here. So this is what you're talking about, Dave.
Yes.
High isolation between the transceiver.
It's like a Johnson TR switch.
That's designed to actually connect between your transceiver antenna and then feed the SDR when you're not transmitting.
So you can actually use the same antenna.
Correct.
Okay.
It bothers me a little bit that their best spec says good isolation. I don't see any data here for how many dB it is.
Well, the whole trick is not to overload the SDR and damage it.
Right now I have an alpha delta manual coax switch. So I flip one.
Now, most of the SDRs that I've seen that use a preamp and an ADC typically are between -8 to -12 dBm is the overload point.
Okay.
On their input, their antenna input. So if you could keep the signal level from your transmitter bleeding through less than that, you're golden. You will have no trouble.
Is there a way of measuring that?
You have a spectrum analyzer?
Don't think. No, I have not like a real spectrum analyzer.
Well,
you got a red pitaya. You can use.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I have a red pitaya.
Just look at the spectrum and see what you see when you transmit.
Okay.
And if you see the noise floor come way up and a whole bunch of spikes, then you know you're overloading. And does the pitaya have an overload indicator for? I don't know if it does or not.
I don't know.
Most real radios will have an overload indicator.
Not that I remember seeing. I don't think.
All right.
But actually, what you have to worry about too is not overloading the TAD1. You know, if you overload any of those inputs with the antenna input with RF, then you'd saturate the amplifiers on the TAD1. And
so
then
maybe I have a discussion with John about that.
It might not hurt the SDR. It might just make the radio not work, which is preferable to burning something up.
Right. You just get that.
Nathaniel, I've got the schematic up. I for some reason couldn't find it on the web page, but I have it downloaded from before. It's variable gain. The outputs are just transformal coupled followers, but it is broadband. You can put in a bandpass filter for 10 megahertz, but that's actually not usually used. But otherwise, it's designed broadband.
So then you could just connect an antenna to the input, right?
Essentially. I would, well, yeah, actually, given that there's, it's a fairly low noise input, it's max 477 IC. I'm not sure what its characteristics are, but you can actually generate up to 20 dB a gain, it looks like.
Because it says
Or
typical
10
phase
dB terminated, but
says typical phase noise performance is minus 140 dBc per hertz.
yeah, that's phase noise, not noise figure, but
Okay.
but yeah, it's pretty. Let me see what a max 477 does.
So Nathaniel,
You can also substitute lower noise op amps. But
how far apart are your antennas?
Well, I only have one antenna right now, so they're not far apart at all. But I'm thinking of putting an RF Pro 1B mag loop on top of my house, probably about 30 feet away from my ZS6 BKW.
What's that, a dipole?
It's basically a G5RV.
Okay, well, that'll be good because especially you could orient the loop to null out the other antenna if it's not too close.
Yeah.
Put the null in the right place and you might get enough isolation to be good.
And the other, excuse me, and then I'm thinking of putting up an off-center fed inverted V, maybe about 50 feet away from the G5RV and making it orthogonal to the G5RV.
Okay. But still, both of those are going to be mostly horizontally polarized, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see what the loop does in the presence of those two antennas.
Yeah.
Is that a shielded loop or a non-shielded loop? An MFJ.
I think it's a shielded loop. It's a DX Engineering.
Oh, okay. I think I know which one you're talking about.
All right.
yeah, the op amp used is a 5 nanovolt per root hertz, so it's actually pretty quiet. And a 300 megahertz op amp.
In which one?
In the TAD one. That's the
Okay.
front end of it.
Yeah, so David, this should not couple to the dipoles very readily, should it, this loop?
Depends on how you have it oriented, but you should be able to null it.
Yeah.
So that might be
if you have any problem.
Yeah, I have a friend. I sent a couple down to Antarctica last year, and they're finally coming back to me tomorrow. So I'll take one and stick it on my house.
It is active, so that the issue would be, do you overload the preamp in it, right?
Oh yeah, that would be the issue there. You're not gonna. That would be where you'd get overload and possible burnout, not the distribution amp.
You think I'd actually burn it out?
Given that it's intended for ham use, I'll bet it's protected.
Mm-hmm.
If you look
it
up
probably
there,
says in there somewhere.
Go roll up a little. Yeah, it says, no, up a little bit, right there. It says, designed for minimum IMD in the presence of very high level signals that would normally overload most preamplifiers. So it'll be your best bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's a good.
I'll be interested to see how that works because I've been looking
try.
at that antenna. It looks like a nice antenna.
Yeah, I have
1 meter in diameter.
Mm-hmm.
The specs seem a lot like the MFJ one.
I think they look very similar. I think this one's just like twice as much money.
What bands does it cover, Nathaniel?
It's a few hundred kilohertz up to 30 megahertz. It's an active receive.
Yeah, it says 100 kilohertz to 30 megahertz right there.
Mm-hmm. So a couple questions. Right now, if I have these mini circuits, I've got the mini circuit splitter set up in this cascade configuration, and it's giving me 4 outputs. And so I guess I'm getting a 6 dB loss from doing that.
Right.
would this essentially be a better solution than that?
Yeah, well, you won't have any loss in that. It'll keep the signal level up. It's equivalent to running a high power amplifier and then splitting it passively, but probably would give you lower distortion to each of the outputs.
So I basically so it's like doing the cascade, but then having a preamplifier ahead of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I think I'll talk to John about that. That looks very.
Yep, he's the guru on that one.
All right, that looks great. And then, oh, I know I wanted to show you. So I want to show you the Kiwi SDR at my house versus the one that's on campus. So, here's the Kiwi SDR at my house. And let me bring up the one. I have to VPN into campus in order to get that one up.
You're just on your local network, right? It's not through your firewall, so we can't listen to it.
You can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you put up the link earlier. I brought it up.
Yeah. Yeah, mine is publicly available. I don't have it listed on the main site yet, but you can get to mine without the firewall. The one on Scranton's campus is not publicly available because they do have it behind a VPN. But mine's better, so.
The difference is amazing. It's crazy the noise at the campus versus where Nathaniel's antenna is.
So yeah, my house is on the left and campus is on the right.
Interesting. Well, think about all the computers that are running simultaneously on campus.
And I think there's also a lot of HVAC equipment on top of the roof there.
Yep.
And I think it's also in an urban environment. So the campus is located in a valley right in the center of Scranton, whereas I'm up in the mountains at 1,600 feet, and I'm next to I'm right in the woods in the middle of 3,000 acres of game land. So
there's a little different ambient noise level.
Yeah, but the two sites are only 5 miles apart from each other as a crow flies. If you look at 80 meters. So yeah, here's 80 meters at my house, and there's 80 meters on campus. So the campus one is running one of those magnetic loop antennas, so it'll be interesting to see it. See the magnetic loop when I have it at my house too.
Do you think the magnetic loop antenna picks up more noise?
I don't know.
Because the way it looks, if you're starting up, you have started up a ham radio club on the campus. It sounds like they're going to have a hard time if the noise levels are astronomical on campus.
I know. Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Or could
Yes,
be something wrong with the receiver, though, too. I mean, are you sure that all this noise is really there?
I have a good feeling it probably is. I mean, you're definitely on top of a building that has a lot of HVAC equipment. If you look at
LED lights are not good for that either.
no.
Probably
right,
not.
right, yeah.
Yeah, the lighting is what gives me trouble on campus. fluorescent lights and then the LED lights they're putting in.
We're
Put
gonna have
a lot of stuff up into VHF.
all of that. So the antenna is like right here.
Mm-hmm.
That's the building.
Yeah, at Wallops when we're testing the RF, the HF experiment on our rockets, we have to turn the fluorescent lights out in the integration room. Though ultimate tests, we actually have take it to a EMI testing chamber.
Yeah. So I don't know. I have to figure out what the best thing to do is with all of this. I mean, another possibility is to do like remote ham radio up to antennas on my property, because then you get you get out of all that noise.
Oh, with something like a Maestro?
Yeah, something like that.
Well,
Yeah, that's actually how the station at South Pole is set up. The primary operating position is in the main building, and the radio is out in a trailer. But they have that remoted, though you can go out to the trailer and operate from there too. Andy and I
can
did
the
that.
Maestro can the Maestro operate on a flex that's not on the local area network? Or I thought the Maestro had to be on the same network as the flex. I mean, you can use a laptop or something like that to connect to a flex remotely and run smart SDR, but I don't know so much about a Maestro doing that.
I don't know what the current status is of that. I know what last time I looked, it had to be on a LAN, but that was like a year or two ago. So I don't know if they've, gotten it to run across a LAN.
Well,
Okay.
Nathaniel, you should at least check it at on campus. It may be acceptable.
Well, what I want to do, I mean, if you do listen to the Kiwi that's on campus, it's definitely, where'd that campus one go?
We have our the Dartmouth station on top of the engineering building. It's fairly high noise level, but it still works.
I think what's going to end up happening is I'm going to build a station that's good enough that students can make, some reasonable contacts and learn some things. And then for anything really good, like then somehow have people use my house for like, I don't know, contests or, but basically create a training station on campus. And then for like really good ham radio operating, go elsewhere. But I think it's still important to have something on campus.
Thank you very much. Boxes, and we're selling the empty
That's not
paper
terrible.
Hodgkins for $8 a piece empty.
Not bad.
Some of those bigger cans. I've seen those cans for sale at $25 a piece.
So I think what it's going to come down to is it'll work. It's not going to be like pristine. It's not going to be a place it's not going to be a destination contest station or anything like that. But I think it'll be a place that we can at least hopefully give students a positive, fun experience with it.
Well, it's not like you have a 100-foot antenna 6-element beam at 100 feet or something. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's not bad for just a G5 RV.
Yeah. Well, this what you're listening to right now, this is the RF Pro 1B, the mag loop down at campus.
Oh, well, I'm listening to your radio.
Oh, yeah. Well, my G5 RV is much better than this one.
Yeah.
Original box, and I'm sure that styrofoam's only that'll be fine.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all magnet.
I'm really happy with my G5 RV here. So yeah, that works well.
I was even picking up pretty clearly a broadcast radio station from Nashville.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was
on AM broadcast.
Yeah, it was. I think it was 650, and it was pretty listenable. It's amazing just what you can get at your location. I even heard a DRM station from Brazil, and normally I can't pick up DRM here, but I heard it on your Kiwi.
Wow.
So Nathaniel, what is the URL for the club station down there? Because I can't seem to.
That one's behind a VPN. You can't get to
Oh,
it.
okay. So I can't get into it.
Yeah. The university is much more locked down.
I'll just have to listen to yours.
Yeah. I actually now know ways to get around it, but I don't think I should do that. Because the way
to try transmitting and listening to myself on your receiver.
Yeah, I can do that. The way I can the way I get around the networking at my house, because my house you don't have a direct you don't have a publicly accessible IP address for my house. So I have a Raspberry Pi that's running auto SSH connecting to a Linode server that I have, and it's keeping reverse SSH tunnel open all the time. And so when you connect to this IP address, it goes to the Linode server, which then does goes through my SSH tunnel to my house through the Raspberry Pi, which then goes to the Kiwi.
Okay, but how do you had to register that URL, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I have to have a Linode server, which costs $5 a month.
Okay.
And I have to have and I mean, once you have a Linode server, that has a static IP address, so then you don't have to have a domain name. But then I have a domain name.
But you could just put the IP address in there if you didn't have a domain, and it would still work.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But not of the modem I have at my house, because my home's internet connection does not have an IP address that's publicly routable.
Right, but your Raspberry Pi server does, right?
My Linode server does.
Linode server does.
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
And the Linode server is just software runs on a Pi, or what is it?
It's a cloud server. It's a virtual server in the cloud.
Okay, so when I do I connect to that IP address, then how does it know to get to your server?
I have my Raspberry Pi connects by SSH to my Linode server and sets up an SSH tunnel back to my house.
Okay, well, so wait a minute, but the Linode server is at your house too, right?
No, the Linode server is in the cloud.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Linode server is actually in. I'm using their data center in Newark.
Okay. And so you've got an SSH tunnel from there back to your house, so that's what you communicate over.
That's right.
Okay.
It's actually an SSH tunnel from my house to there. That's why it's reverse
Right.
reverse SSH.
But so all you're doing is you pay your $5 and they give you basically a port on their server, an IP address.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
So
and I have a full, and then yeah, and then I have root access to a Linux virtual machine.
So that's like do that rather than go to your cable company and pay for a fixed IP address.
Yeah, that's right. That is something you can do. Yes.
You could do that, but it's probably not for $5 a month.
Right. And I mean, then the other nice thing about having it in the Linode in the cloud is it's actually in a data center. It's in a managed data center.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
And for an extra $2 a month, they run automatic backups for you.
Okay.
So that's what
you're
they
using it as a link, though. I mean, you don't really store anything there, do you?
not really. I mean, I also have hamsci.org running on one of those.
Oh, okay. But that means that the content would be at your house, but the link would be through one of those nodes.
In this case, yeah, which is what you have to do if I'm running a Kiwi at my house.
Right, but if you're running the hamsci site, is hamsci.org the actual HTTP server that's running at your house, right?
No, that's running at the data center in North.
Oh, it's running on one of those. Oh, okay. And in that case, you would want it backed up, right? So what kind of storage do you get for your $5?
25 gigabytes.
Oh, that's not bad.
No.
Is there a limit to how much streaming you could do? Like if you put videos up there or anything?
Yeah, they have Linode. Let's see. They have plans. Dedicated solutions pricing. Pricing list. So here you go. So this is the
low
Anode,
end.
the low end. You get 1 gigabyte of RAM, 1 core, 25 gig SSD, a terabyte a month of transfer, 40 gigabit per second network in, gigabit out, $5 a month.
So what's the difference between network out and transfer if you've got like videos on your site?
Well, this is so once I transfer a total of 1 terabyte for the entire month, they cut me off. But that's the data rate over here.
Oh, that's megabits per second. Sorry, I thought never mind. Okay. So if you had a lot of popular videos, you'd be in trouble with 1 terabyte then.
Right, yeah.
But that's probably not what it's made to do.
Right. I mean, for me, I'm keeping all of our videos on YouTube. So then all of the data goes from YouTube. It doesn't come off of
so it doesn't affect you.
Right. I mean, hamsci.org it's a relatively small website.
Does YouTube have a limit? Like if you put, or they would just like more transfers, more views?
Yeah, they want you to use YouTube as much as possible because then they stick advertisements on.
Yeah,
it and make money.
So.
But it works for us too because, with the YouTube, they handle all of the maintenance and make sure it's always up and running and searchable and all of that stuff.
And backups so you don't lose anything, right?
Right.
Well, it's 11 o'clock. I'm going to say 73.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah,
David.
time to go.
Talk to y'all later.
I agree. Thank you very much, everybody.
Take care. Good night.
7-3. Hey,
Good
Dan,
time to check out.
Did you say that there was a trade-in program on that Fire TV? You're muted. Hello, Dan.
Hello, Scotty.
Oh, there you are.
Hello.
QSL.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is. I'm kind of wondering. I've been thinking about that a little bit, and I'm kind of wondering if maybe the display settings aren't causing problems with the Fire Stick because that's the first gen, and I'm not sure how smart it is. So I'm wondering if it starts up, like 720p, and then and that's when you see the Amazon logo.
Yeah, I've seen the Amazon logo one time. Only one time, and all the rest of the time it's just dead screen, just blue screen.
Yeah. Well, don't worry about it because why don't you send me your address, like your street address, and I will send you another Fire Stick.
Well, you have another one laying around?
No, but I have a special deal.
Oh,
Fire
boy.
Sticks. I'll send you a special deal.
Okay. Okay, I'll do that. I'll text it to you.
Okay, all right.
And sending it to the house is much better than it took us like 2 weeks to get it from the damn post office.
Yeah.
They won't put it in the box. And so then you got to go down there during normal hours, and then there's like 40 people in line.
Yeah, that's the same thing. When you sent me the box,
yeah,
some months ago, I had to go through the very same thing.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's awful.
So one more question is, I looked in the end of the HDMI connector on the Fire Stick itself, and the upper left corner, which I think is pin 19, is recessed. And that's the automatic detect pin.
Oh.
So I'm wondering if maybe the connector's damaged. But then I looked at the extender little dongle thing, and it's got the same problem.
Huh.
Anyway, so I don't know if in an HDMI connector, if all the pins are supposed to come up to the top, or if there's one recessed down, or what.
I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever looked down the end of one of them.
Yeah. So anyway, and I tried it on a regular monitor too, and it didn't work either. So.
Okay.
And the monitor should auto
Yeah,
detect.
it shouldn't be a problem.
So.
Yeah, I'll send you one. It'll go out.
I'm not going to sweat over it. It's not like it's a big deal. I mean,
I know, but they're kind of fun to have because you can look at a lot of stuff with it, and most of it's free. So
it said you can even look at files on your network.
Right, but you have like Amazon Prime as well, so
yeah, we have Amazon
access
Prime.
to like zillions of.
Well, we have network, Netflix, and then I have a DLNA server that my machine's running, and I can watch any of the movies that I've ripped to hard drive. I can watch them on any TV that's connected up.
Yeah.
Well, the Fire Stick's basically just an Android device.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one.
Well, he sent me his old one, and I can't get it to work. So
oh,
it's
really?
Weird. I don't.
We've had two, and then like. They worked really well for a while, and then they got sluggish or something. And I have an old MacBook that I just connected to our main TV, so now we're just using a MacBook that just does everything.
So you got a MacBook as your TV server.
Yep, that's right. It works great.
Yeah, well, we got the old TV that we took out of the family room. We put it up in the living room, and it doesn't have any networking. It's just HDMI input, so it needs to either connect to like a MacBook or
I just
Fire
put a
Stick or
laptop.
something.
Just put a laptop on there. Laptop.
I could do that. And I got enough of them.
Then it'll play everything.
But if you do that, can you watch like Netflix and Amazon?
Oh yeah.
Prime with So you just go load the PC app right onto the.
You just run it through the website.
Oh yeah, I guess you
can just
do
go Netflix.com or Amazon.com/Prime Video. We do it all the time. YouTube.com, and then now I have a remote mouse app on my phone, so I can use my phone as a mouse and keyboard for the computer.
Yeah. Well, and Dan, I tried loading the Bluetooth remote app on the phone.
Yeah.
You can't see the Fire TV. It doesn't stick there. So because I figured, well, the remote's the wrong one, right? So I just use my phone because you can load the app on your phone.
Right.
And it can't pair with anything. So.
Break. I'm gonna back out of here. I will not be on next week because Alabama is playing for the national championship, and I've got to watch that. So
is that when they're playing Ohio State?
Yeah, right. It's probably going to be a close game.
I went to school at Ohio State, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in Ohio for years. I have plenty of friends there. So, but anyway, we'll see. We'll see what happens. So 73, and we'll see you.
Okay, so when we meet next week, we're going to put up a
Bill.
window with the game in it so that we can watch while we're.
Well, you're be my guest. I'm going to be watching it on the 85-inch. Well, good night. 73.
73, Bill.
73, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan and I watched the Ohio State versus Clemson game.
Mm-hmm.
What, 2 days ago? Saturday?
Yeah,
What a waste of time.
Mm.
It was not much of a game. Clemson got their butt stomped.
Yeah.
It was kind of like the ASU, not the ASU, the Cardinals versus San Francisco.
Uh-huh.
Arizona was actually favored to win, but they played so awful. It was just, it was painful watching them just getting run over and over again.
Mm.
So, one of those.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll send you my address, Dan, and
Okay.
go from there. Use the thing. I'll wedge the thing under the door to keep the door open.
Okay, perfect.
I guess I'll say 73. I should go.
Yeah.
So.
Time to go rest. See you guys next week. Oh, Nathaniel, is Hamsai on this week or no?
Yeah, I should send an email out about that.
Oh, it is on. Okay.
Yes.
I don't know whether
Yeah,
I'll make it much. I'll have better odds making that one than the morning one because one of the things they don't tell you is you sleep 9 or 10 hours a day.
Oh man.
And so I don't really get up that early anymore. At least not the past couple weeks.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're doing okay. I mean, that's like.
Well, thanks. Yeah, like I said, you worry about whether you're going to wake up dead or something.
It's like a really unlucky lottery.
Yeah, and you can win the lottery and you can still not win any money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like winning, like getting 5 numbers out of 6 and earning $5.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, 7-3.
7-3. Scotty,
later.
Dan, Jonathan, Yeoman.
See you later.
73. Good night.
7-3.